Something a little different. Me and my lovely people are in Newport in Rhode Island, and we've been having a lovely time here so far, like we usually do, but as I just said, this is something different. We are currently at the Marriott Hotel waiting to go on a ghost tour. Yes, we're going to go around Newport and basically find out about various hauntings all about it over the years. So it should be interesting to say the least. And of course it's at night time as well. Are you ready, Lily?
I'm very ready.
I am ready too.
My name is Miss Adams and I will be your host to the ghosts on tonight's tour. Now before we begin, there are a few obligatory rules that I have to go over. We ask that you please turn your cell phones to either silent or vibrate. I hate to be in the middle of a riveting story and then have the ambiance ruined by Skrillex. We do allow smoking, but we ask that you please step away from the rest of the group so it doesn't have any adverse effects on anyone. And lastly, for those of you who are not originally from Rhode Island, you may not be aware that the drivers here are insane. They will not hesitate to cut you down if you are blocking their path to Dunkin' Donuts. So at all points in the tour, keep to the sidewalks and crosswalks, please. Make room for everyone so we don't have people walking in the street. And of course, look both ways before crossing, even if it's technically a one-way. I don't want to add any ghosts to the tour this evening. Some fishermen were waiting for the morning tide to come in so they could start off their work. But as they were waiting, something rather unusual caught their eye. It was a cave. What was so unusual is that this cave did not look like it had been carved by the waves over time. It looked like somebody had very roughly hacked at it from the face of the cliff. Now, the men decided to go inside and explore the cave. They found that there was actually something of a rudimentary path that had been carved out by someone. This could not have been naturally occurring. The further and further they went, they found more and more signs of tool marks. However, the cave abruptly narrowed into a point that they couldn't go past any further. It was at this that they had the idea that it had to be pirates' treasure back there. Who else would have carved out this cave in such a way that it wouldn't necessarily be noticed unless you knew what you were looking for? And along with that, why did it suddenly narrow in? Unless somebody had something to hide back there. Well, they were all very excited at the prospect of gold and jewels waiting for them. But again, they had to remember that they couldn't get past the cave. They needed somebody who was much smaller than they were. Now, unfortunately, in those days, Newport had a large population of orphaned and homeless children who lived along the harbor side begging for their dinner. So it really took the men very little effort to find the right-looking lad for the job and to spin the young boy a wild tale of the gold, the silver, waiting to drip out of his hands. He would never have to starve on the streets again if he could just get them through to that treasure. The young boy agreed without hesitation. He was outfitted with a candle, a drum, and the instructions to go through the cave and to beat on the drum in a steady fashion. Now, while he was going through the cave, the men would follow the drum beats above ground. When he found the treasure, the boy was to beat on the drum as loudly and quickly as he could. This would signal to the men above to begin digging below. They would pull up the boy and the treasure, and everybody would go home as rich as kings. Now the plan worked out initially, and they followed the drum beats along the harbor side through Brick Market, and they got to about this spot in the city when all of a sudden, the drum beats stopped. Maybe this is it, they thought. Maybe he's found the treasure and he's standing there in awe. Let's wait a little bit longer. He'll signal to us any second now. But the drumming did not start back up. Maybe he's tired and taking a rest. We've been going for quite a while now. Let's just be patient a little bit longer. But the drum beat still did not start back up. That's when they began to wonder. What if the boy had found the treasure, but had made off with it without giving them their fair cut? They went running back down to the harbor side, angry as hell, prepared to beat the boy. When they got down there, what they found instead filled their hearts with dread. The tide had come in, faster than they had expected, filled the cave to the brim with freezing seawater. The body of the young drummer boy was never recovered, and no further attempts were made to try to excavate the cave or to try to find the treasure therein. That's assuming there was treasure in the first place. And along with that, this photograph that I'll have you folks pass around is taken right behind us, over by those pillars there. In the lower left-hand corner, next to the pillar and the lantern, there's a bit of smoke forming what almost looks like the head and shoulders of a small child. I would suggest if you have a flashlight with you, you'll probably see the image a bit better. If you don't have that with you, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to lend my lamp.
Is that the haunted porta john?
When Mary went to offer the two men breakfast, the breakfast tray clattered to the floor because the belongings of both men were gone, along with one of them. The other was lying dead on the floor. He had been strangled in his sleep. Now, unfortunately, whether his death was caused by his companion or some homicidal third party, his murderer was never brought to justice. But now, jump in your mind's eye 250 years to the 1970s. A local paper is doing a cover of some of the fine dining around town, including the White Horse here. Their photographer is sent over, and they get one shot in particular that's so good, they decide to use it on the front page of that month's edition. However, it wasn't until it had gone into publication that readers began to write in asking about the very strange figure that appears in the upper right of the corner there. Tells of a gentleman called Howard who worked in a cemetery much like this one, and one evening he was starting off his shift when all of a sudden across the graveyard he could hear one of the bells going off erratically. He ran as quickly as he could and he found the grave it was coming from, and through the hole he could hear a woman calling up, "Help me! Somebody please get me out!" He called down, "Ma'am, stay calm, it'll be fine. It says here on the grave that in life your name was Miss Sarah Brown. Is that true?" She called up to him, "It is. Please get me out of here." He was just about to reach for his shovel when he noticed something else on the gravestone. Something that made his heart skip a beat. "Ma'am," he called down, "how can you be Miss Sarah Brown? It says here you were buried in February. It's August." Whatever was underneath let out a blood-curdling scream that made his blood run cold. Howard very quickly cut the string and filled the hole with dirt to make sure whatever was underneath never made its way into our world. So it seems Howard knows the first step of how to survive a horror movie. Now, not to end the evening on too morbid a note there, Trinity here has actually played host to some very interesting historical figures throughout the years. Queen Elizabeth II visited here in 1976 on her bicentennial visit. George Washington also worshipped here in 1781 when he was meeting with our French ally.